What's up guys, Zach from Art Customs, and today I'm going to show you how to rebuild the Model 94 carburetor. Alright, so now it's time to bolt the body down to the base. And if you get a generic gasket kit, it's going to come with multiple different types of gaskets. Make sure you use the right one for your year. So just go through them until the holes up here line up just right. With the other gasket it won't. So I'm going to put this gasket on, and I'm going to go ahead and put the body on. And I just want to make sure I line up the holes for the bolts before I put the bolts in. I don't want to break the gasket putting some bolts in. Now here's going to be a part where do as I say, not as I do. What I'm going to do is put the screws in on the back. On this front one, what I recommend is putting a bolt in there. I just happen to be completely out of my bolts right now, so I'm going to put the old screw back in. But if you have carburetor issues on the car and you have a bolt here, you can pull the carburetor off and leave the base on the car, adjust the carburetor and put it back on. So that's why I recommend doing that. So let's go ahead and bolt this back up. Okay. Body mounted to the base. Now that the body's on, it's a good time to put the accelerator pump linkage back together. So the longer end's gonna go into the pump rod. So like mine clips in. Some of the newer ones have little C-clips that go on the back. So make sure you know which one that you have. And I'm gonna put mine in the middle. I'm gonna put mine in the middle notch until I figure out what I actually want to set mine up as on the car. Okay, so now this next part, I'm not telling you to do this, right? I'm not telling you to do this, but I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna put this magic fluid into the bowl. Now, you can't see what bottle I'm using, right? It's magic fluid. Now that I have my magic dust in the bowl, I'm gonna move the accelerator pump up and down. And I'm gonna watch the squirter to make sure both sides of the squirter works. I primed it. Oops, suck in air. You see both sides of the squirter pumping. Good, it's a good sign. Okay, now it's time to put the choke in. Go ahead and put the choke rod in. Okay, so here's a small step you don't want to miss. This is the choke spring right here. Get my camera to focus. It should hook over the shoulder right here. So hook over the shoulder. And it's gonna set in this little notch right there. So you're gonna have to play around with this a little bit. So we're gonna get this in here. I'm gonna put it in that notch, and I'm gonna spin it clockwise until it has tension. Okay, it has spring tension. I'm gonna put the choke plate in, and make sure you put the choke plate in from the bottom. Okay, you can put it in from the top and get it to close, but it'll be wrong. Your linkage right here will be wrong. So make sure you put it into the bottom. Make sure it comes all the way up. The holes line up. Move the shaft in and out so they all line up. And when the plate is closed, the screw should go in from the top. So when it's closed, the screw should go in from the top. All right, now I'm going to install a little choke detent, the small detent spring. And what I like to do is put a little wheel bearing grease on this before I put it in there. They actually have a tendency of getting stuck inside the housing, so I put a good dab of wheel bearing grease onto it. And just wipe off the excess. Okay, now I'm going to put in a little choke lever. Obviously the detent goes into the slot, so make sure that's facing down. And it locks into, these little forks lock inside the actual choke. So it moves back and forth, it opens the choke. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt this on. Make sure it locks in place and unchokes. All right, now it's time to install the float. So make sure you put your gasket on. Go ahead and screw this in. Okay, make sure you put your needle in. The pointed tip should go towards the top. Now before we put the float on, we have to put the gasket on. So go ahead and put the gasket on, make sure it's the right way. Put the float on. Put the float on. Get a little float pin in. Now, make sure you measure your float. It needs to be at 1 inch and 5/16. They give you a little crummy ruler that you can use. With a gasket, it should be at 1 inch and 5/16. Make sure you check it on both sides to make sure the float isn't bent or crooked for some reason. So now we're good to go ahead and put the top on. All right, since mine's going into a running motor, I'm gonna go ahead and put this magic fairy dust in the bowl. Get a decent amount in there. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put the cover on. Just be careful of the gasket when you're putting this on. And I do not want to tilt this. Do not want to lose any of my fairy dust. Get all my bolts started. Okay, now I'm gonna put my little adjuster and spring on. So make sure the spring goes around the hook at the bottom here. Make sure you hook the spring in right there on the bottom. And this adjuster is going to spin into place. It's gonna go towards the back. Just like that. All right, let's put it on the car. All right, so I'm pretty happy about that. This engine's set for at least 1 year, if not 2. We built the carburetor, put it on, fired right up. Sounded pretty mean, sounded pretty good. I'll have another video later of how to adjust the idle, how to adjust the fuel ratio, and all that good stuff. If you enjoyed this video, just like it, share it, and as always, get your shit together.